let's make a serving tray. I happen to have a bit of plywood and some leftover boards that are marked up that I can use for this, so hence my dimensions that I have here. So I'm going to have a 17 1/4 long and 13 3/4 wide serving tray. And the boards that I have are 5.5 inches wide, so once I cut them in half, accounting for the saw blade, we'll have 2 5/8 inches to play with for the height of the walls on our serving tray. And we're going to use a chop saw to cut each of these guys to length, and then we're going to cut them in half with the table saw. And then we're going to use a router table to rabbet the short sides of our tray, and then use the router table again to cut grooves with a different bit. So we're going to use one bit for the rabbet and one bit for the groove, and then we'll scroll saw the handle holds on the ends. So let's take a look at our pieces here. I have this bit of plywood that's 3/16 thick, so we're going to use a 3/16 inch bit for cutting the grooves. And this thing is 13 inches by 17 1/4 inches. So the way I have it set up, I'm going to be cutting a rabbet here on the end, which will allow the two sides to move in, which means that the ends have to be a little bit longer to account for that, because I want to also have a groove there. So it's 13 inches, but the rim, the frame needs to be a little bit bigger to go around it. Now, the length needs to be exactly the same side because the ends are going to be moved in by that rabbet. I also have these boards here. This one is marked up, had been used by a student for something, made a mistake and abandoned it, so we'll be cutting this down to length. And this one, I have no idea what even happened to this guy. It looks like it just randomly got scraped up, so I have a nice clear piece here that we can use for this, and then the rest of it will continue to be scrap, probably for hammering things together. So let's go over to the chop saw and cut these guys down to length. Now, before we measure the lengths for our frame, we want to make sure that we have clean edges to measure from. So this edge will need to be cut off, or this edge. So we're going to cut off one edge from each of our boards because both ends are messed up. So we're going to cut off one edge to have a clean edge, and then we're going to measure. And for this one, I think I'll use this one for the long side, and this one I'll probably use for the short side. So for using the chop saw, remember good safety. First, clear the space so that you don't have anything in your way. Clear the tabletop, and we're going to unlock the table saw, and that means flat hand, pushing down on the handle, and then reach behind to pull the pin out, that silver pin at the back, and then we can let it go up. And then I'll choose which side I want to cut off. This guy's going to be my 13 3/4 inch, so that's plenty of space there. So put this up secure against the fence, and make sure that it's running into nothing on either side, and up against the fence securely, holding outside. So see, no hands inside here, hands outside there. And we're going to bring the blade down to test, and you can turn on the light. See the shadow of the blade there, and that will tell us exactly where the wood is going to be cut. All right, turn it on, slowly plunge, let the blade do the cutting, and don't force it, take your time. And this is the sliding miter saw, so we can bring it out and in to get a very nice sharp cut without tear out or fuzzies, except for the back. It's really hard to avoid that unless we're going to take extra measures. So we're going to cut this guy and then cut the other guy and then measure for our lengths. All right, that guy cut. Repeat on this guy to get a nice sharp edge. And then when we're done, we lock it down, leave it in the down position, clear all of our debris away. That goes to the trash. And now we can measure. All right, back at the workbench, I want to measure this dark guy, which, now because I've got these drill marks here. All right, so this guy I'm going to measure to 13 3/4. 13 3/4 and mark. And I'll come down here, farther down, 13 3/4 also, mark. Now for drawing a line that I want to be perpendicular across, I'm using a square. So put my pencil in, slide over, and then strike the line. Make sure that the lip is directly there, good. And I hit both dots. You want to make sure that you hit both dots. And now I want to mark the waist side of the line, so I'm going to put a big X over there, and I'm going to make sure that I cut so that I can still see the line when I'm back at the chop saw. And I'm going to be doing the same thing to 17 1/4. So I need to mark this, use my finger here. So you can either use your finger to make sure it's flush, or you can go over 1 more inch and line it up with the edge there. Either one should be fine as long as you are genuinely flush. And I want 17 1/4. Here, and I won't worry about these pencil markings. I'm going to sand them off anyway. So 17 1/4. Again, get the square, pencil in there, slide this over, make sure that the square really is square, and strike a line. And now I'm going to go back to the chop saw and cut. Oh wait, I need to make sure that I mark the waist side. Waist side is over here. All right, so I'm going to cut on the waist side of the line and on the waist side of the line, and it's very important that the ends are exactly the same length and the lengths are exactly the same length, because otherwise we're not going to have it square. So we're cross-cutting this first, and then we're going to go to the table saw and rip down the middle, and that way we know that these two sides, which are cut from one board, are the same length. So let's go back to the chop saw and cut this to length. All right, now here we have a line because we're paying attention to how long we're cutting it this time. And we want to make sure that the blade itself is on the right side of the line. So the left side of the blade needs to be just touching this line. So once again, we're going to push down on the handle with a flat hand. Don't touch the trigger right now. And you can look at the back there. There's the silver pin to pull out now that the tension has been taken off of it. And this is where the light's going to come in very handy, so that we can see, so you can bring it down, and you can even bring your blade down so that it touches, as long as you don't pull the trigger. A cross cut. All right, that's pretty well set, and I took my time setting it up. Left it up so the blade is not in contact with the wood. Hold securely outside the radius. And always make sure to let the blade stop moving before you lift it up again, because if the blade is still moving and you lift it up, the spinning blade could catch this wood and chuck it, and you don't want to deal with that. Neither do I. All right, we have our cut. And you can see the line is just on the edge there. And you can also see that maybe my line was not perfectly square. But we're done with that one. We can move that out of the way. And do the same thing for the other guy. Lock down, turn off light. And now we can go sand these guys off.